So the rules. So, of course, you had the rules that every witness follows. That's all in these books right behind me. And we had additional rules for your rules. So all the rules that you had to follow as a witness times a million. And then Bethel rules. I had to categorize these rules because there were just too many, and I can't obviously go into all the billions of rules there are. But the big ones were, of course, no drinking before you turn 21, because Bethel, at least in Brooklyn, was in New York State. You can't drink before you're 21 in New York State and in most places in America. Obviously, no pornography, no rap music. You couldn't even have like scantily clad things, so we were not allowed to have Sports Illustrated magazine, period, because they knew that the swimsuit edition would be coming, so you couldn't have that. Obviously, no rated R music. There was no touching yourself. But here's the thing about that. They knew that was going to happen, so they just said, try to reduce it and control it. Now, there are rules that said, seeing as how this is the issue, let's make broader rules so that we don't get close to an issue. So when it came to, like, you couldn't really touch anybody. They didn't want brothers really touching each other. They didn't want, brothers wrestling in their underwear. That was an actual morning worship. They didn't want you really even high-fiving sisters who were married. They preferred that you didn't. Some sisters, again, like I said before, they wouldn't even shake your hand. So no touching that. The rule, of course, if you had a sister in your room who was not your wife or close family member, you could not have the door closed at all. If there was just the two of you, you had to have it open. Obviously, that's why. Couldn't work with sisters too much. A gazillion and one rules. Now, when we talk about certain dress and grooming rules, again, crazy amount of rules. You couldn't wear shorts in certain lobbies during certain times, and you had to know all those times. You could never really wear shorts in the main Columbia Heights lobby. That was an obvious rule, and obvious as to why. You had to make sure that your clothes were not revealing or too tight, which is crazy because the uniform at Bethel, like the polo and the pants, usually a little too tight. You're showing some man cleavage and some back cleavage. So I don't know about all that. So there was also you couldn't show your tattoos if you had them from before. For whatever reason, they wanted you to conceal them. They didn't, of course, want anybody to have too long of hair. They didn't want brothers to cut their hair too low or too bald. So you had to get approval to go bald, basically. If you were going bald and the hairline was receding, they wanted you to keep it as much as possible. And then you had to talk to the barber, and then the barber would basically say, okay, you're gonna have to go bald. But you couldn't. You couldn't just do that. They preferred a little hair in your head, minus whatever culture you were. Obviously, no tank tops or wife beaters. No. Oh, they didn't want you like changing in front of your window. So make sure your window is closed so that because a lot of times when you're in the high-rise apartments in Brooklyn, you don't think that anybody can see you, so you just change. You don't have much room in your living space, so you just change. And they're like, oh no, people can see you changing. Close your windows. Makes sense, I guess. But we didn't care. We're 23 feet up in the air. No one actually saw us. We couldn't have shorts in the commissary. Big one for me because that was such a stupid rule. What a dumb rule. Again, the commissary was like a convenience store. Why couldn't I just wear shorts in there to grab something and come home? I'm not gonna go put on pants and go to. It was stupid. Obviously, no jeans in certain areas. there were times for when you could wear things, times for when you couldn't wear things. Your dressing grooming was really, really big thing for them when during, tour route and hours, they didn't want you changing, or they wanted you to change out of your work uniform before you went anywhere on the tour route. You could not walk or commute home, walk back and forth in just work uniforms or work clothes. You had to change out of that into 9 times out of 10 it was going to be, kind of meeting attire to get to and from home. So a lot of times during the day you're making 4 or 5, 6 wardrobe changes. Yeah, they micromanage like crazy. And that's just dress and grooming. Then the routine of Bethel was also something you had to do correctly. They were going to check your check-ins. So, of course, we had morning worship at 7 o'clock. Then you had work at 8 o'clock. You had to be there, check in, or have a good excuse. Monday night watchtower study was also required. Lunch was not required. You didn't have to go to that. But they all have different rules for when you can and should be down there. You had to read the Bible within 1 year if you're there for the first year, and missionary students had to read the Greek scriptures within a few months before they started their Gilead training. You were to keep track of that, and you were to report your chapters throughout the time that you were reading the Bible through that time period, and they would tell you should be on this book, this chapter at this time if you started at Bethel these dates. So yeah. Then you also had things that they would do to make sure that they could conserve costs. So again, remember we talked about seniority being the form of currency at Bethel. So they wouldn't like it if you had low seniority, or not even low seniority, but if you were a younger person and you took the elevators too much. If it was within 5 floors that you had to get to, they wanted you to take the stairs, and you would get shade from anybody older on the elevator if you were in the elevator and you really needed to take the stairs. There are also other things that they would do to try to conserve costs. They were constantly telling us, oh, everything here is donated. Make sure we don't break anything. If you break anything, remember that's donated funds. Showering. It used to be back in the day that there would be like a line of just naked guys in the locker room waiting for the same shower in the locker room after work, because they wanted you to shower before you left work just so you could walk home. No, I didn't do that. I showered at home. Because I had a shower. I didn't have a communal shower. I had a private shower. Not everybody had a private shower. Now I think that's different. But they still have a gazillion locker rooms. The rule for that, even if you had a private shower, was so stupid. They wanted you to turn the water on, shower, like soap turn the water on just to get yourself wet. Turn the water off, use the soap on your body, and then turn the water on again to rinse your body, and then be done, to conserve water. This is real. This is a real rule. They wanted you to make sure that you kept a good watch on how you use the HVAC system. So heating and air conditioning. If you were cold, they encourage you to put on more clothes before you turn the heat up. If you were hot, same thing. Open a window, close your curtains, all that stuff to conserve the energy or whatever, conserve costs. And back in the day, they didn't have air conditioning. And if you know anything about Brooklyn and those buildings, it gets hot as hell. So there are 1,000,001 rules. I'm going to tell you how to break them and get around them in a second.